Thank you, and hello everyone. We are joined today by Lincoln Senator and Speaker of the Legislature, Mike Hilgers, who also just recently announced he is running for the Republican nomination for Nebraska Attorney General. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thanks for the opportunity to be here.
Let's talk a little bit about, first of all, I guess, congratulations for throwing your hat in the ring. And talk a little bit about the decision to go ahead and do so at this time in your career.
Well, Doug Peterson has done an outstanding job as our Attorney General the last 8 years. And had he decided to run for re-election, it's an office that doesn't have term limits, I would have been the first person to support him because he's done such a good job on so many important fronts, some of which I think really go to the core of what we're doing, trying to get accomplished here in Nebraska, including, maybe most importantly, protecting the rule of law and the Constitution. Over the last year, what we've really seen is especially from the federal government, but not just from the federal government, really an overreach of their constitutional authorities. And we've seen it with the vaccine mandates most recently, but we've also seen it with eviction moratoriums that were struck down, efforts by the federal government to dictate whether Nebraska can cut taxes. So those are really critical issues that impact Nebraska, Nebraskans, Nebraska families. And if we didn't have a strong Attorney General in that spot when General Peterson steps down, it was going to be a pretty important issue. So that, combined with my background and skill set as a lawyer, has been doing this for over 15 years, a lot of the same types of skills that would translate to the Attorney General's office, and the need to have someone who was conservative and had some strength to be able to file those suits and knew what they were doing in that regard. That's why I decided to run.
Yeah, there's been a lot of issues, as you said, on the federal end where, take a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Waters of the U.S., another one that is rearing its head as we speak, as a matter of fact. Talk a little bit about your background, though. Let's let the listeners and viewers, kind of understand who Mike Hilgers is.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I was born and raised in Nebraska, middle of 5 kids. I left, like a lot of young people do, to go to college. I went to college and law school out of state, and I practiced in Texas for a few years. My wife is actually a native Texan, so we went to school together. An attorney herself, she's actually a former felony prosecutor in East Texas. And over 10 years ago, I convinced her to move to Nebraska, and we decided to move back home to be near family and to raise our children really in the environment that gave so much to me, being around people who lived every day with honesty and integrity and hard work and all the things that really makes Nebraska special. So we moved back. We started our family. We have 4 little kids, all 10 and under, 3 girls and a boy, little Mike. And I started my own law practice, did kind of what you can do in the United States, which is bet on yourself and start your own company. Mm-hmm. I did that over 10 years ago, just me as the only litigator at the firm, as the head paralegal, the head dishwasher, and did everything. And through a lot of hard work and persistence, we've been named one of the fastest growing companies in the country. We now have over 60 lawyers nationwide. We've recruited lawyers to Nebraska. We've given jobs to Nebraskans, given them an opportunity to stay home. And so that's a little bit of my personal and professional background. I've also served in the legislature, as you noted. I've been there now. This will be my 6th year.
Mm-hmm. And elected in 2018?
2016. Re-elected in 2020 and elected as Speaker this year, 2021.
Yeah. Now, of course, you're going to be Speaker going forward into the next session, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But certainly you've got a wide variety of experience, and there's a lot of subject matter that's been coming before and has come before the Attorney General's office, whether it's opioids, some of the settlements that have happened with that, sex and human trafficking have been big issues for Doug Peterson. Do you expect to face more of the same, and what else beyond that for Mike Hilgers should he become Attorney General?
That's a really good question. Doug Peterson's done an outstanding job elevating, as an example, the focus on trafficking, which is something that maybe a lot of Nebraskans didn't think existed, but it certainly does in our state. The top issues would be federal overreach, continuing criminal prosecution, robust criminal prosecutions, especially out west. The western part of the state really relies heavily on the Attorney General and their prosecutorial resources to do child abuse investigations and the like. I also think that there's a lot of what you're seeing is state AGs around the country working towards, pushing back on big tech. What is big tech doing to our kids? You see the recent investigation announced by Attorney General Peterson into Instagram, and what are they doing? So a lot of those things, maybe when he ran, he didn't think that he'd be investigating Instagram in 2021, but they all go to the same principle, which is how do you enforce the rule of law, protect our Constitution, help protect communities against the bad guys, and help raise and elevate the status of issues that maybe we had forgotten. So how does that play out over the next couple of years? I mean, to some degree, it's anyone's guess what the issue might be in 2026. But those are sort of the principles that would guide me going forward.
And certainly you would have colleagues in other states in the same positions that support some of those stances, just like we've seen with some of the vaccine mandates, where we've had coalitions of states that have come together to, push back against those.
Well, that couldn't be more right. In fact, one of the most important roles of the AG now is to work with other states, because they're filing lawsuits in Texas, they're filing lawsuits in California. One of the vaccine mandate victories was filed in Missouri. Nebraska was a party to that particular action. It's so important to have a state attorney general who can see the whole chessboard and work with other players to be able to think through the strategy of where to file the lawsuit, what causes of action, how do you frame it. These are pretty complex strategic decisions that need to be sorted through, and you have to be able to build coalitions and work together. And that's something I've done in my private practice. We've been in cases around the country. We work on really complex issues with large teams of lawyers, and it's something I've done in the legislature, working with other senators to try to build coalitions, many of whom have a similar conservative philosophy as I do, but in many cases they don't. They might be on the left, or they might be a Democrat, and you see Attorney General Peterson and other AGs working across party lines to try to take on some of these really important battles. And it's no longer can be just an Attorney General who just focuses just on lawsuits in Nebraska and just sort of lets the world do its thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, of course, you just recently announced, right after Doug Peterson said he wasn't going to make that run for a third term.
Yeah, that's right.
Already, you've got quite a bit of, quite the cadre of support, I should say, among Governor Ricketts, Lieutenant Governor Foley, former Governors Heineman and Orr, and others, already got your back.
Well, you mentioned quite a few of them, and it's humbling and it's an honor to have their support. I think highly of every one of the ones you mentioned, Senator Fisher and Congressman Smith and former Governor Heineman, of course Governor Ricketts, who I've really
Bacon as well,
Yep, Congressman Bacon as well. A number of county prosecutors and state senators across the state. Excuse me. And so that's, for me, it's very humbling to have their support, because I think very highly of them. I also think, though, it's a reflection of the work that I've done, and these are people that in many cases I work very closely with. So Governor Ricketts, as an example, as speaker, I meet with him weekly. We work together very closely. We've had a lot of success working together. We had the best tax cutting year, as an example, this year. My first year as speaker working with Governor Ricketts, that the state's had in at least 25 years. So I think it's a reflection. Those people know me well because we work together all the time, and so I think it's a reflection of the approach and at least the professional approach I've tried to take working with those individuals. So, and then from the campaign itself, it's very validating of what we're trying to accomplish in this campaign.
Well, you mentioned working with Governor Ricketts as the Speaker of the Legislature. This being your first full year, had to throw a nice special session in there along with it to deal with drawing new political boundaries for all of the various offices.
There was very little nice about that session.
It was pretty rough, but one would have to say that looking at what Mike Hilgers did, shepherding the issues through the main session as well as the special session, you did yeoman's work.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I was very proud of our body. We got the data late, as many people know. The Census Bureau data typically comes in January. We got it in August, and we had to get done by October 1st. So what normally is a 6-month deliberative process where people could really sort through and think through things got compressed into about 30 to 45 days. It was the only issue that we had, and it was such a difficult process. Many other states didn't even try to take it up. Most states actually are taking up in their regular session. So I was very proud of the legislature that we did our responsibility and we got it done. It was very difficult. There were some sharp elbows, but at the end of the day, we worked together and got it accomplished. And now we have a chance this year, as we come into a 60-day session with some big things in front of us. What we don't have to do is start the session with a very divisive redistricting debate. Now we can focus on how do we make Nebraska better here coming up next year.
And what do you see as some of those issues coming up for this session coming up here, starting in January?
Well, I think there are a number of big issues. Probably the biggest deals with fiscal, which you probably would normally think would be the case, but this year's a little different for a couple of reasons. The primary one is we have been given from the federal government over $1 billion, slightly over $1 billion we will receive from the federal government for ARPA funds. And those are one-time dollars, and we are looking for one-off investments. And for a state that has, an $8 billion budget, getting $1 billion to be able to spend under a short time frame on infrastructure projects or the like can be pretty transformative if we do it wisely. At the same time, we have really a record level cash reserve and additional general fund dollars. We just had this week the additional forecast for additional revenues. I think November came in over forecast. So we've got a lot of general fund dollars. How do we spend those? There's going to be a significant effort, one that I support, on how to cut taxes. What additional taxes can we cut? Because we need to give those dollars back to Nebraskans. A couple other issues I know will come up. One is the Star Wars Committee, which is the State Tourism and Recreation, STAR, Water Access Resources Special Committee,
Nice.
one that I chair. Thank you, Star Wars Committee. It's a kind of a fun name, but it's a very serious project, which is how can we take one of our greatest natural resources, water, and elevate those resources around the state from a water sustainability perspective, flood control, but also tourism, economic development, recreation. You know, we've got amazing lakes, like reservoirs like Lake McConaughey and Lewis and Clark Lake. How can we add more access to those facilities, those places? And then beyond that, there will probably be a school finance discussion at least, and a whole host of other issues that I know will come because we have a big crop of senior senators who will be term limited this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Lincoln State Senator, Speaker of the Legislature, and now candidate for the Republican nomination for Attorney General, Mike Hilgers. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.